Leaders and activists from across the city and from a broad array of Austin's civic and political community, from across the divide of all political parties and the nonpartisan League of Women Voters, came together to advocate for changing Austin's all-at-large voting system to single-member districts. They realized that after 6 unsuccessful efforts over 30 years, adding an innovative Citizens Redistricting Commission that would take the weapon of redistricting out of the hands of politicians and put it into the hands of ordinary citizens, modeled off of California's and other states and municipalities that were already using them, could make the difference. One of the nation's legal experts on redistricting, UT law professor Steve Bickerstaff, and local reform activist attorney Fred Lewis, provided the drafts of the first independent redistricting commission in the state of Texas. A series of meetings ensued, and in August 2011, the coalition backing Citizens Districting 10-1 was formally established as Austinites for Geographic Representation. The City Council appointed its own committee, the Charter Revision Committee, to address this issue. In spring 2012, this committee, chaired by former State Senator Gonzalo Barrientos, recommended the council place CD 10-1 on the ballot. The Austin City Council put their own plan on the ballot without a provision for who would draw the lines, allowing the council to decide their own method for drawing the district lines. This forced the AGR coalition to collect over 30,000 signatures, which guaranteed a place on the ballot for 10-1. In November 2012, Austinites overwhelmingly, by over 61%, supported geographic representation, and Prop 3, the Citizens Plan, defeated Prop 4, the Politicians Plan. The Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission is not only historic, it's the first such commission in the state of Texas. It is also truly independent of the Austin City Council's control, though the council is mandated to adequately fund the commission so that it may hire its own staff and consultants to get the maps of 10 geographic districts ready to send to the U.S. Department of Justice in time for the November 2014 election. Redistricting legal experts agree that maps should be submitted to the Department of Justice by the end of 2013. Visit www.trustaustin.org for more details on the history and educational materials you might need. And if you're not able to volunteer for the commission, we hope you will volunteer your time with Austinites for Geographic Representation. This chart is an overview of the Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, or ICRC. The chart is also a table of contents for the rest of this presentation. You'll see the letters on the left side of this page are duplicated on each of the following pages, so you can see progress and understand the relationship between the sections of the presentation. The sections of the presentation are: who can serve on the ICRC? What are the requirements and restrictions of membership? How are candidates for ICRC identified and selected? Who selects them? How are the 14 members for the ICRC selected? The final step is drawing the 10 districts. This section will give an overview of how the districts will be drawn, but the actual drawing will be done by the ICRC with mandated hearings before, during, and after the preliminary maps are drawn. Note that CD 10-1 gives the city auditor the power to initiate the entire ICRC process. AGR chose the auditor because we wanted someone within city government whose job it is to be impartial and a watchdog on the city council. That said, the auditor is a city employee, so embedded in the ICRC process is a safeguard that resides between the auditor and the selection of the 14 volunteer commissioners who will draw the lines. That is the applicant review panel, made up of 3 independent auditors, chosen randomly. They are not city employees. These 3 auditors will ultimately oversee the screening of the applicants for the commission. Who can be an ICRC commissioner? The city auditor will publicize the ICRC to attract a large, qualified, diverse applicant pool. The application period for the ICRC commissioners begins on January 18th and ends at 5 p.m. on Friday, February 22nd. You must be either an Austin voter registered for at least 5 years and have voted in 3 of the last 5 city elections, or a student studying at a community college or university in Austin and registered to vote here. Note that AGR designated one of the 14 commission seats to be held by a student, which is why for that seat, having been registered in Austin for 5 years and having voted in 3 of the last 5 city elections are not required. What are relevant analytical skills? This is broadly defined on purpose. It will be up to the ICRC applicants to make their case in their applications to such open-ended questions. Volunteer applicants should not be intimidated by this requirement. If someone can navigate the CAP Metro schedule or can figure out new ways to get home in rush hour, that someone has the relevant analytical skills. What does it mean to be impartial? As you'll see in the following 2 pages, the qualifications and disqualifications of ICRC membership will likely take care of the impartiality requirement. However, the specific requirement does allow a volunteer to be challenged on his or her impartiality. That's important to the citizens of Austin. Volunteers are disqualified if they have held or run for city or state office for the last 5 years, been a paid employee of a campaign committee or a paid consultant for 5 years, been a paid lobbyist in the last 5 years, given $1,000 or more in the last city election, been a city employee in the last 3 years, or received a professional, non-competitively bid contract with the city for the last 3 years. There are also future activity restrictions to serving on the Commission, so make sure you understand what you're agreeing to. They are that you will not run for a City Council office for 10 years, and for the next 3 years you will not accept an appointed office by the City Council or serve as a paid staff person for the City or the City Council, or be a paid consultant to the City or City Council, or receive a non-competitively bid contract with the City. This applies to individuals and all entities for which the individual is a controlling person. What is a controlling person? A controlling person is an officer, director, manager, principal, or shareholder or member owning at least 10% of a legal entity. Members of the ICRC are not paid, but personal expenses incurred will likely be covered once the Commission constitutes itself and figures out its budget. What is the Applicant Review Panel? It is a trio of qualified, independent, licensed auditors who assess the volunteer applicants to the Commission. The Applicant Review Panel, or ARP, reviews the volunteers for the ICRC, determines if they meet the qualifications and disqualifications outlined above, and selects 60 they deem to be the most qualified to be potential members of the ICRC. The City Auditor helps create the Applicant Review Panel by asking for local auditors to volunteer for the ARP and then randomly selecting 3 of those auditor applicants. These 3 independent auditors put a level of indirection, a firewall if you will, between the City Auditor and the group that will select the first members of the ICRC. After the Applicant Review Panel identifies a pool of 60 qualified potential candidates for the ICRC, selection of the 14-member ICRC proceeds. Each council member is given 1 strike to remove a candidate from the pool. This 1 strike is modeled off jury selection, where both defendant and prosecutors get to strike a candidate without explanation. This is the beginning and end of the council's say over the ICRC selection process. The first 8 commissioners are chosen randomly from the pool of candidates by the City Auditor. The next 6 commissioners are selected by the initially selected 8 commissioners. The second selection step assures that the final 14-member ICRC will reflect Austin's diversity of race, ethnicity, gender, and geography. Transparency, openness, and acceptance of public input are key characteristics of how the district maps are drawn. There are extensive required hearings. The first time the districts are drawn, the hearings are done in the 4 county commissioner districts, since Austin does not yet have 10 districts drawn. Thereafter, the hearings will be done in each of the 10 single-member districts. So first there are 2 public hearings in each of the 4 county commission districts prior to when the preliminary plan is voted on by the commission. Then there is a preliminary plan vetted again in 1 public hearing in each of those 4 county commission precincts. The ICRC also has to display this preliminary plan for public comment for 14 days. The ICRC then votes on it and holds 2 more public hearings, 1 north of the lake and 1 south. The next ICRC takes at least 5 days of written comments. Then and only then can they adopt the plan. The ICRC is straitjacketed in how they have to draw the lines. They must abide by the Voting Rights Act and the Open Meetings laws. The ICRC has to draw the lines for compactness, respecting neighborhood boundaries, cannot consider the address of the incumbent, and much more. You can read the entire ballot measure, now also in the city charter, at www.trustaustin.org under the menu button, What is CD 10-1? There is a timeline for things to happen once the applications are filed with the Auditor's Office on February 22nd. The applicant review panel of 3 independent auditors is randomly drawn on February 27th. The panel provides the 60 best applicants to the Council for their one strike on May 16th. The remaining applicants are put into a random selection process on May 22nd to choose the first 8 commissioners. Next, how do ordinary citizens get on the ICRC? In short, you fill out an application. The application phase for both the auditor panel and the 14 commissioners begins on January 18th and ends at 5 p.m. on Friday, February 22nd. Go to the 10-1 website. Just Google 10-1 Austin to get there.